Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Howdy, y'all. This is Red.olaughlin. I am the talking head today for weight management, which in context really means how do you lose some weight? And we're on the USA Global TV and Radio Network and the program's Talking Heads. This is part 4 out of a planned part 6 series. And today we're getting into what you might consider the heart of the matter, because there's so many things that are going on that sometimes it's really difficult to fully understand. So let's just jump to slide number 1. Let me get that set up here. Okay, there it goes. Okay, and moving. First off, I'm a researcher, not a doctor, never been a part of the pharmaceutical industry. I fell in love with chemistry at sophomore year in high school, got a degree in it, immediately got an invitation to Vietnam, never practiced until just a few years ago. I research the human body at the cellular level, chemically speaking. I look for cause and effect relationships. Treat a cause, fix a problem. Treat symptoms, and you'll always be treating symptoms. I got involved in this when my wife had breast cancer, and I was doing some research into the cellular level of the body, trying to figure out what could I do to help offset some of the aspects of the chemo and radiation that she was getting. Regardless, today's talk is on weight, and there's a lot of things chemically going on in the body. It's amazing. And as we've seen here in the past first few episodes, there's so much stuff out there that confusion is probably the main topic, because if you listen to one person, then, oh, this other person says that, oh, that other person, oh, who do you believe? But weight in most cases is individual, but they all obey the same chemical rules. And that's the part that's interesting. The rule may be obeyed 90, 95, 98%. But regardless, the chemical reactions happen, and there are some things that can speed them up a little bit or slow them down. But in keeping with my program here, I weighed in the very first time for the beginning of this weight management program, and I said each week I'd keep everyone up to date. Well, last week, my wife and I celebrated our 55th wedding anniversary. I had made a cherry pie, a German chocolate cake. I made a bunch of macarons. She made some ice cream. And so we had a really nice dinner with some friends. And for the next 3 days, I did nothing but pig out on desserts. And once they were gone, then I went back to my normal regimen. So since then, I'm down a couple of pounds, down almost a total of 7. Body fat continues to drop. My body mass index continues to drop. Everything that was in the green or dark green or orange is still the same. There's no change there. The 2 areas of concern on my computer program that I'm using, subcutaneous fat and body fat. And we're going to touch a little bit on that, I hope, today, because there's one slide where I put in an option to go just a little bit into that, and hopefully I'll remember to talk about that. So let's get it. We're going to be it's a lot of summary today, but it's important. It's stuff we need to know. The general equation for weight loss: calories in equals calories out. However, that does not always mean that if I start exercising an extra 500 calories every single day in a week, that's 3,500 calories, which in theory means that's 1 pound of weight loss. Or if I stop eating 500 calories a day and in 7 days I have not eaten 3,500 calories, in theory that means I lost a pound. But for many of y'all who have actually tried that, you find out, hey, maybe that works, maybe it doesn't. Is it really weight loss? Is it water loss? Is it fat inches that you're losing? Are you burning fat? lots and lots of things get in that equation, but it just says calories in equals calories out. And that's not the whole equation, because the equation, when it says equals, means that on both sides, that's it. But what happens when you apply metabolism? That's what burns some of the calories, but also stores calories. What about hormones? Well, most of us just think about insulin. Maybe occasionally we might think about cortisol, stress hormone. But what in reality is happening? So I thought we'd just go through a few. There are probably, I'm going to say 50, 60 hormones, over 60 hormones in the body that I'm aware of. And the ones that are involved with fat and weight management and metabolism, they're all, insulin affects metabolism, insulin affects fat storage. And we're going to cover a lot of these today, because I think it's important to know it's just not a couple. When you have something out of whack a little bit, it causes other things to go out of whack, and you just can't fix one. But the real neat thing is that almost everything is fixed with the exact same solution, and we'll talk about that. So insulin, primary goal of insulin is to get the glucose out of our bloodstream and into our cells. That becomes our energy. It's stored in the cells as glycogen for immediate use. That gives us the ability to move our arms, lift things, walk, do all those things we need to do as a human being. But when insulin's present, you cannot burn fat. Chemically, it's impossible. So in the process of eating, if you're eating carbohydrates, there's a lag time between the blood glucose rising, insulin being generated, insulin forcing the glucose into muscle cells and whatever. And if you're not using up all that energy provided by that meal, then the extra glucose that's being bandied around, transferred around the body in the bloodstream, are going to be transferred to fat cells. And so at some point in time, the insulin's actually going to retreat, recess, and now you can actually start burning fat. But that doesn't happen in just an hour or two. That takes a long time. But when insulin is present, you can't burn fat. So if you're having 3, 4, 5, 6 meals a day, and most of them are snacks, and some of them contain some level of carbohydrate, sugar, chances are you're not in a mode to ever burn fat, because you're constantly putting the glucose into the body. Now, if you actually take and say, I'm going to eat everything I'm going to eat, those 6 meals, I'm going to cram them all into a 3 or 4 hour window instead of over a 12 or 15 hour window. That same amount of food, you can actually lose weight, because you've used up the glucose, and now your body starts burning fat because it has a 15 or an 18 hour window to start burning. That's why intermittent fasting, going that 15 or 18 or 20 hours between meals is so critical. Even a 1 meal a day, OMAD, is something that you can eat a lot and still lose weight. However, just because insulin is there and transferring that glucose into the cells, if you've been living a life of comfort, let's call it, our comfort zones, we love to eat, we love to just not do much of anything. Over time, that insulin becomes what's called insulin resistant. You no longer have the sensitivity that you used to have years earlier. And so it takes more insulin to get the blood glucose stored, and more insulin's in the bloodstream for a longer period of time. All those things work against you in the process of trying to lose weight, to lose inches. Sensitivity improves with exercise, sleep, healthy fats, healthy diet, that's balanced nutrition, and weight management. Now, that same thing, exercise, sleep, stress management, healthy diet, balanced nutrition, healthy fats, all of those things will work in every single one of the hormones that I'm talking about here in the next few minutes. So keep that in mind. Leptin. Leptin actually comes from some of our fat cells. It regulates the appetite in our brain. So when we start getting fat accumulated, leptin sends a little communication up to the brain and says, hey, we're okay. We don't need any more. And so just like insulin resistance, you can get leptin resistance, again, by overdoing the amount of fat we carry around on a daily basis. Insulin resistance increases without exercise, not paying attention to the right foods to eat, stressed out. Leptin resistance is the same thing. We're not getting the full story. The rest of the story doesn't come to the brain. And so we're not getting the full reaction that we need to do. So as a result, leptin resistance, instead of saying, I got enough, thank you very much, it tends to keep you eating more food. And just like I mentioned before, improved with exercise, weight management, healthy diet, stress management, all of those things. Moving right along. Ghrelin. Ghrelin is that one that you feel in your stomach. You get that hunger pang. All of a sudden you're hungry. You wake up in the morning, you feel, I need something. In reality, it's very difficult to tell the difference between that hunger pain and dehydration. Wake up in the morning, take a nice big glass of water. See if that hunger pain comes back 10 or 15 minutes later. For some people, it will. For a lot of people, just that dehydration. You got a chance to refill the body just a little bit. But that hunger pain tells the body, you haven't eaten in a while. It's time that you get some more food in here. We need more. So that ghrelin is talking to the brain and says, okay, I need this to get done. And so you start to eat food. And as our metabolism slows, and I'm using that metaphorically, not empirically, and I'm going to get into a lot of detail about that toward the very end of the show today, because in reality, the metabolism appears to slow, but the metabolism is dependent on other things. So as this metabolism slows down because of that extra weight that we're carrying, the extra fat, ghrelin levels decline. So we get to a point where we're not saying we ought to eat more. It's just not quite the same feeling. I do a 72-hour fast every month. It usually turns into 100 or more hours. And in reality, I might get a ghrelin knock on my door once, twice, maybe 3 times over 3 or 4 or 5 days. It happens, but it doesn't last more than just a couple of minutes. I take a glass of water and it's gone. But eating, exercise, balanced diet, sleep, lifestyle issues, it's a pattern for keeping us balanced in every aspect of our life. Moving right along. Cortisol, stress hormone. There are some other ones there also. But cortisol is something that is created when we reach out and we grab a hold of stress and we don't let go. Stress affects everybody. It doesn't matter what it is, the traffic, red lights, your mother-in-law. It doesn't matter what it is. Stress affects all of us. It's not what is the stress. It's how we allow it to affect us. If we hold on to it, we don't let it go, then it builds up cortisol in us. A lot of us, all of us, have 4 times the number of fat receptors in our gut that cortisol loves to fill. So that's the first place cortisol is going to store fat, is right around the gut, which brings a really interesting question. If you were to ask somebody, where is the very first place, let's say you're a perfectly lean person and you start adding weight, noticeable weight, you could step on the scales and you're a couple, 3 pounds more. Where is the first weight actually added? What part of the body? And this will surprise a lot of people because it's the back of the tongue. And this is critical because a lot of times when you add a little bit of weight, you end up with the case of being able to snore. You may not have snored before, but now all of a sudden you're snoring up a storm. Because when that tongue relaxes a little bit when you're sleeping, it kind of folds over and causes that snoring routine. Well, it also can cause sleep apnea if you happen to have a lot of extra weight. Now, a lot of that extra weight's in the back of the tongue, and it actually can close up and cause some issues. Something I learned just very, very recently. But stress, 80% of doctor's visits have a genesis in some aspect of stress. Stress management techniques are all around us. The biggest one, take a deep breath, hold it for 30 minutes. 30 seconds maybe. I think the world record for holding your breath underwater is 26 minutes and some change. But the issue is you're doing something. A big smile, a laughing. It doesn't take much to instantly apply some level of stress management. If you're on an exercise routine, you're out exercising all the time, well, that's great. But you can come home, on the way home, maybe somebody almost ran into you. Maybe somebody walked out in front of you. Who knows what sets people off? You get home and there's more stress. Well, you got rid of yesterday's stress at the gym, but now you're starting to accumulate new stress for today. Maybe there's something you ought to be doing periodically. A smile is the easiest one. A little laughter, just a lot of things out there. Breathing exercises. Every time there's a commercial on TV, if you're watching TV, hit the pause, not the pause button, the mute button, and do some breathing exercises. But sleep, exercise, weight management, balanced diet, all of those things work to help reduce stress, help reduce the stress hormone. Another one, estrogen, uh, the female reproductive hormone. It's not a big deal in our fat management, weight management issue unless it's very low levels. Estrogen is needed for both male and female for skeletal, vascular, and immune systems. Um, High levels of estrogen are associated with some cancers. My wife's breast cancer was associated with high levels of estrogen, and we put her on some estrogen inhibiting uh, uh, nutrients. I think it was indole 3-carbinol is what we were using. But there are some natural ones out there. The prescription drugs that her doctor was giving her had too many side effects, so we went to the indole 3-carbinol. But if the opposite is true too, if you have too little estrogen in your body, it's going to affect your ability to store body fat. It's going to give you weight issues, it's going to give you heart issues. And low levels of fat are generally seen around the gut because you're storing more fat. Weight, exercise, balanced diet, stress, sleep, all those things are there to help correct some of those situations. Neuropeptide Y, one of those things we never hear about. It stimulates our food intakes. We have more than just ghrelin saying, hey, I got to eat. It's produced by cells in the brain as opposed into our gut or fat cells. And it's also in our nervous system. It stimulates the appetite and also decreases our energy use. So we're kind of adding extra stuff to the system. But a healthy diet and exercise maintains the normal level of neuropeptide Y. And when you fast for a long time, that's when those levels get up to the healthy where you need to be. But it also helps out when you're stressed because you're using both the energy system and the nervous system in the body. It's one that we don't hear about, but we really need to pay attention to it. Glucagon-like peptide, GLP-1. It's produced in your intestines. It regulates literally how fast everything goes through your stomach, how fast everything goes through your intestines. It takes care of our blood sugar. It kind of regulates how fast we get that blood sugar into the levels that we need to get into our cells for storage. Some of the diabetic medicine actually employs the ability to use GLP-1 as part of that medication. Increased protein, extra steak, extra salmon, whatever, improves the GLP-1 levels. But again, we're looking at how that affects, we're going through our gut, going through our intestines, and part of that getting into our intestines is going through our gut. And so probiotics to improve our gut health is also going to improve the GLP levels in our body, GLP-1 levels. Cholecystokinin, CCK, almost reminds me of a place over in Taiwan that I visited a few times there. CCK, I think, was an Air Force. It was a Taiwanese base not far from where I was stationed there. Anyway, getting back to our program today. CCK deals with appetite regulation. It's produced in the gut after we're eating. It's a protein synthesis. It's involved in getting our proteins processed properly. It's big in actually allowing our digestion to follow the proper course. Lots of things CCK is involved in. It increases leptin. There can be some sensitivity issues with CCK, but to maintain proper CCK levels, protein and exercise. Now you might ask a question, is plant protein just as good as animal protein? Be perfectly honest, I don't know. Protein is protein. I don't necessarily think it makes a difference where it comes from. So long as you're getting a balance of all the amino acids you need, I don't really think it makes a difference whether the protein comes from plants or comes from animals. So from that particular perspective, take your choice. Peptide YY, PYY, is a gut hormone. This reduces appetite. When we have low levels, our appetites increase. Again, you get too far on one side, it does the opposite of what it's supposed to do. But if we have a balanced diet and we exercise, how many times have we said that so far? Diet and exercise, sleep and stress, all those things. But again, just like the last one, protein's super important to keep the PYY in its proper levels. And again, we're quite a few hormones into this thing, and it doesn't look like the hormones are stopping at all. But I promise you, we're going to stop on hormones after the next slide. Adiponectin. It's a protein hormone. It's created in your fat cells. It regulates your blood sugar. It regulates the ability of our bodies to actually take and break down fatty acids so that we actually have an energy source. It regulates our insulin sensitivity. It enhances our metabolism, and it's anti-inflammatory. And in some cases, when you're looking at, I think I'm going to save that till I get to brown fat. I think I have brown fat in there. If not, I'll do my best to remember that. But it's almost like a gas pedal that you're pushing forward. The adiponectin increases our metabolism to do certain things. Well, the next one we're going to talk about is resistin, and that's the opposite of that one. So resistin is a hormone also made in our fat cells. It impairs insulin. It's the opposite of adiponectin. So anything that adiponectin does, resistin does the opposite. So you end up with insulin resistance if you have a lot of resistin. It increases the risk of diabetes and obesity, and increases inflammation in the body, and it can have a major disruptive force on your metabolism. And again, the same things: your weight management, exercise, sleep, stress management, all those things keep everything in normal. Okay, yes, we do. I didn't go into visceral and adipose fat. Adipose fat is that fat that we can see around our bottoms of our arms, our necks, our bellies, the stuff that you can push on. It feels kind of spongy. It's a white fat. It's globular. It's the fat we think of when we think of fat. And it's the fat that creates all these hormones. It acts like an organ. It has its own blood supply. It creates hormones. And if you get too much of it, the blood supply can't take care of the whole part of the whole cellular structure of that fat area. And that becomes a major problem, because now you end up with, I'll talk about on the next slide, I think, but it ends up with affecting your entire body, especially your liver. But you also have another fat called visceral fat. Visceral fat you can't see. You could be a skinny person and have a lot of visceral fat. You can be a fat person and have little visceral fat. But it's inside, right next to our organs. It's not on the outside of our muscles. It's inside that entire deal. And it's wafer thin. It's almost like a piece of tinfoil, that kind of thin, very, very thin. And it's brown because it gets its coloring from the iron that it attaches to in the mitochondria. Iron being a ferrous compound, kind of rust gives you that brownish red deal. But anyway, the brown fat is good fat. It's the one that actually, if you know how to crank it up and turn it on, it will actually act as a blowtorch, literally a blowtorch, and start burning white fat, the fat that you want to get rid of. So the brown fat, when we're young, little kids, mainly down the back of our neck, shoulder blades, it was thought for a long time that adults didn't have brown fat, but they eventually found out that we do. And nowadays it's along the side of your neck, going on down into your chest. In fact, if you hold your arms like you're really cold, the areas that you cover up with your arms and your hands around the side of your chest, that's the areas where you have a lot of brown fat. Brown fat is used when your body is cold. It stimulates the fat production. It's called thermogenesis. You're actually trying to get your body to heat up. That brown fat is something that you want a fair amount of. You want to be able to activate it, and you want to be able to activate it against its arch nemesis, white fat. So anyway, so you have visceral fat, which is bad. You want to get rid of as much of that as possible because that's attached to your organs. The brown fat is literally right in that same area, but it's super thin. White fat is the stuff we feel all around us. So what other hormones are created by fat? I mean, you got a lot of globular fat there right around the gut. What happened? Well, leptin, adipsin, alkylation stimulating protein, ASP, angiotensinogen, plasminogen activator inhibitor 1, PAI1, adiponectin, resistin, eprosin, ghrelin, and there's too many more. I mean, there's many, many more. I looked at them there and said, yeah, I could throw a slide up there, but they're just a lot of abbreviations. But seriously, fat creates a lot of hormones. So the more you have, you end up in a situation where nobody can talk to each other. you're sending out a signal, but the signal's being jammed, and all of a sudden where adiponectin is supposed to be telling somebody something, or ghrelin or leptin, that when you end up in an obese situation, you have way too much fat. That fat as an organ takes over a lot of the things in the body, and it's extremely, super difficult to get all these hormones communicating properly and at the right levels. And let me go back because I did want to touch base. I think it's on the next slide. I'm pretty sure it is. Nope, let me go back here. Because one of the things that when you start having the situation of too much fat around the fat cells, the fat will actually leach out, will actually leak from the fat cell itself. And our lymphatic system will capture all that, take it up to the liver. Well, the liver starts accumulating this extra fat that's leaking out of the fat cells. And now you have a very high increased chance of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, something you really and truly do not want. So you end up having this extra fat that's adding inflammation to the body. You have fat that doesn't have enough blood supply that's creating inflammation in the body. You have the extra fat being accumulated in the liver. You don't want lots and lots and lots and lots of issues going on when you have too much fat. So that is just part of the chemical reaction when those things happen. So anyway, moving right along. Yes, I do plan on covering in the next couple sessions what are effective ways of getting rid of fat and menopause, obesity, all those kinds of things. Yeah, that's my intention. So I'm not leaving you hanging. Yeah, I will leave you hanging at the end of this one, but regardless. So metabolism. Those are the chemical processes going on in our body that basically change food into fuel. And whether that fuel is glucose or ketones, the metabolism doesn't care. So when you're eating, metabolism, primary mission, let's get that food into the cell so it can be used for energy, and the leftovers will store as fat. Now when the insulin goes away and our bodies normalize, now the metabolism says, okay, let's go ahead and switch from blood glucose to ketones and start burning up fat. So those are the things in the body. But metabolism, in that calories in, calories out, we think, okay, fine, it's there. And as I get older, my metabolism slows down, and I got to eat less, and I got to exercise more. We're going to cover that in the very next slide. However, just like we had a lot of things influence the aspects of fat generation, fat storage, there are a lot of things, hormones particularly, that can influence your metabolism. Insulin, thyroxine, thyroid, growth hormones, leptin, cortisol, estradiol, ghrelin. A lot of them, if they're going to influence your fat storage, they're also going to influence the burning mechanism. And I think my next project is to talk about how do we get fat out of fat cells. That's probably the next week's one. But there was a study done 2 years ago. The most up-to-date thing in the world regarding metabolism. It just literally almost makes all the old books written on it out of date. Study was over 6,000 people, 29 countries, and they looked at people from about 2 days old to over 92 years of age. And they found out a few things very interesting about that. Number one is that we basically keep the same level of metabolism most of our life. It doesn't change. It changes in a couple situations. When we're born to about 1 year of age, our metabolism runs at about 50% more active than what you would do at 30 years of age. When you turn 20, from 1 to 20, because you're operating at 150% level of the adult rate, it starts to decline. So by the time you get to 20, you're at 100%. So you're essentially at the adult rate for metabolism. So for the next 40 years, from 20 to 60, you're at an adult rate. It doesn't go up, doesn't go down, doesn't go faster, doesn't go slower. It's steady, it's constant, it doesn't matter. From 60 to 90, during those 30 years, you're going to decline 1.5%, 2% a year, 0.5% to 0.75% per year over the next 90. So by the time you turn 90, you're at about 83% of your adult rate. But essentially, you're about the same as you were back in your 40s and 50s. Metabolism is constant. It doesn't change. However, it can be influenced. It can be influenced by age, we just saw here in the demonstration. Gender, not so much. Pretty much everything is constant. Hormones, definitely. Exercise, but also the muscle to fat ratio. When we start putting fat on, that's when we start having a problem with metabolism. We used to think that I'm 42 years of age, my metabolism is slowing down, I'm putting on an extra 10 or 15 pounds. Wrong. That's not correct. What happens is the weight gain actually slows the metabolism. And that's what they found out in this study. They actually were able to take and measure the metabolism through the breath, through the saliva, through urine, and were able to assess what actually is going on in the body at various stages of our life and at various things that we do. So when you start putting on that extra weight, don't blame it on your metabolism, blame it on your food choices, your exercise choices, your sleep, your stress management, all those other things in the life called lifestyle factors, lifestyle choices that you have the ability to control. So your weight gain actually slows down the metabolism, not the other way around. So if you lose the weight, your metabolism comes right back to where it was. Oh, thought I had another one. Okay. My books are available on Amazon. No matter what you can do it, deals with the subconscious brain, something that controls 95, 98% of everything you do. The Joy of Ageless Health addresses how disease gets started in the body at the cellular level. What causes it? What can you do about it? Longevity Secrets for Healthy Aging talks about the two primary causes of aging, what you can do to accelerate or decelerate the aging process. Understanding the Causes of Alzheimer's is a compilation of over 40 articles I've written over the last several years that goes into details about what causes Alzheimer's and what's been known to actually have some level of effect on it. And my latest book, Essential New Author's Guide, is basically how to write and publish your book for free. Those are all available on Amazon. And with that, we are again concluding this week's talk on Talking Heads. We're talking about weight management. We'll be back again this next week at our regular time. And this is Red O'Laughlin signing off on Talking Heads, USA Global TV and Radio Network. Bye, y'all.